Hi folks, I'm back cutting through the matrix. I'm just talking about this world system we live in. You can call it what you want, New World Order, a new beginning of things, whatever. There's a whole bunch of terms that's used out there by the big boys themselves. Globalism is another one, of course. Interdependence is part of it too. And interdependence means really that you're not independent for anything in yourself, your own personal life, or your country for that matter. It means you're dependent completely on every other country. And it's not every other country, it's the guys that own the countries. All of them. All of them. The money boys own them all. That's because that's who set up this system and the institution, Royal Institute of International Affairs. They're all bankers, international bankers. They set up the thing to bring up, to take over the whole darn world. Using wars as well, by the way. The first one they used was the Boer War. That's in their official history. They actually caused the Boer War and blamed it on the Boers. Typical game that they play when for propaganda. Still using the same techniques today. They always work, you know. And so you always demonize your enemy and say weapons of mass destruction, etc. And the worst demon the world's ever seen. And the great Satan, all these names that they use. And most folk don't really care what your country does with your cash, your tax money, as you go off to bomb other countries. You get nothing out of it yourself except more debts, more taxes, and the big boys simply plunder and steal everything in those countries they're invading. But as you go back to the books from the Royal Institute of International Affairs, go back to the books by Professor Carl Quigley, Tragedy and Hope, and the Anglo-American Establishment, and you'll find their techniques are all in there. That's so interesting too, because there's just a Rhodes group that formed one of the nucleuses that joined with the Milner group, the banking establishment, that became the Royal Institute of International Affairs. They used to use drugs. From the very beginning, they used drugs. And they used drugs, too, to bring down China and other countries. That's why they wanted India. That's why we're in Afghanistan still today. We're guarding the poppy fields for the same characters. And yet, the beauty of it is, too, they understood that if you own the money of the planets, like Rothschild said, I don't care who the puppet in front is, he says, give me charge of the money and I'll control the country anyway, and the British Empire. Well, it doesn't really matter what parties you vote in. They're all ruled by the same system, run by the same people, and obviously they get their way. They get their way. There's only one agenda. And the trick is to train us all universally across the world now with a standardized education, with their standardized version of history, which is always being rewritten, and training us all to be good citizens. Every country says that, be a good citizen. And being a good citizen means simply being politically correct. That means updating yourself like a computer program with the next update. Just jump on it right away and start parroting it. And, say, and pretend it's always been that way. Oh, I've always thought that about so-and-so or these people or whatever it happens to be. I've always been for that. And you'll get up the ladder, you see. So we adapt and we adapt and adapt in preparation for the next part of the agenda and the next part and the next part. Very simple techniques. Neuroscientists by the thousands are employed by governments across the world, by the thousands by the United Nations alone, that's helping to form the nucleus of this order. And neuroscientists, psychologists, they have all kinds of anthropologists working with them too. Everything to do with behavior of human beings down through the ages to ensure they don't have much of a problem bringing in the system. We're allowed a few riots here and there, and that's good for the terror business. You know, we need more police, we need more tanks, etc. And it lets off a bit of steam as well. It makes everyone else think something's being done about these rats that run the world. But it's not really. Nothing's really been done at all about them. So what I try to do here, as I say, is documents that give you the books to look at. Fascinating histories, as I say, of just two or three of the institutions that run this world. Fascinating histories where they actually admit in their own records that they would need world wars. Need world wars. That was World War I and II, before they happened, of course. But they would need world wars to bring the people to their knees. So they give up national sovereignty. And it wasn't just national sovereignty. It was to bring in the whole agenda of what we thought was communism. All funded by the big international bankers. Because under communism, you see, they could deal much more swiftly with governments. They could lend to governments rather than lend to individual people. The governments would then get the heavies or create a tax department to send out the heavies to collect the cash for them on their behalf. And they much prefer it that way too. Then the governments themselves would act like lenders by signing treaties and dishing out the taxpayers' money across the planet. They would end up not in third world countries, maybe technically in third world countries, but really for their other branches of international, transnational corporations. That's where their money all goes. Hasn't changed today. Most folk don't really care, you know. Most folk don't really care about it. They're too happy because never in history has so much entertainment, cheap, plentiful entertainment been dished upon them across the whole world. Doesn't matter what country you look at, they could be living in utter poverty, but someone's got an iPhone here somewhere, and someone's got some gadget or other that's getting some kind of electronic entertainment for free coming across the airwaves. And it's an interesting thing because this has never happened in history before. Never happened in history before. Cheap, 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 plentiful, ever-increasing entertainment just dished out by the ton every day. And the people gobble it up. I can tell from this particular position I'm in here, where I get hundreds and hundreds of emails every single day and night, 7 days a week, where people's minds are. And you can see the trends. I've talked about trends before, the techniques that are used to control you, your mind, to guide you, and to guide your minds, even guide your opinions, and eventually even your vote sometimes. But you're always prompted and nudged, as they call it at the top. They actually call it nudging and prompting you to think in certain terms. But I can see how they work on the people. And with every new computer version that comes out now, if you look into any site at all, the darn thing's trying to say, well, people who watched this or read that would also watch this or read this. Meaning what? See, they understand that this strange thing about people want to be the same. There's a sameness in the people. They all want to be this. Well, if they all looked at the same thing and then they looked at that, then I should do the same thing as well. Why? Why should you do that? Because everyone else did. And for all the things that are happening across the world, NATO has given the go-ahead. Eventually, they're really ramping up against Syria and Libya at the same time for another plundering war. And of course, everyone's going to be taxed, incredibly taxed to the hilt. We're being plundered again with the latest climate fiasco that's went on. I don't believe what they're telling you. They've actually got us all down for giving out more billions of dollars across the world to supposedly stop climate change from getting too bad. That's all happening. I'm getting letters in here and emails about woman gets run over by a steamroller. No kidding. I've lost count of how many folk woman gets run over by a steamroller. And trivia like this. That's what you throw out by the bucketful to the circus crowd, the ones that like circuses. You know, the bearded lady, you know, the dwarf and stuff. And they lap it up. They must lap it up because they send it to me. And it's all going round and round and round in what's called trends. Trends. So anything comes in, a little while ago too, maybe a week or so ago, the great scientists that come up with all these theories. Remember theories, I guess, where a bunch of guys wearing white coats with the same kind of degree make guesses about the same thing and come to a consensus on it. So they call it a theory, you know. And they're on about ancient man, different types of man breeding with Neanderthals and all the rest of it. And you wouldn't believe the incredible questions I've had coming in here. Incredible. Never mind who's running the world today. They want to find out how it started. Was it these guys? And the thing is, you see, that with a good conspiracy theory, you can keep it going forever because no one can prove it right or wrong. That's why it's a conspiracy theory. When you stick to the facts, it's not interesting, so no one wants to know. When you stick to stuff you can prove, no one wants to know. But that's the world we live in, entertainment. And unfortunately, people are really blending entertainment with all the serious stuff to such an extent now they can't tell the difference. They can't tell the difference. And it's a sad state of affairs. I remember doing a broadcast back in the late 90s, and I mentioned that the libraries, I noticed the libraries have been changing for 10 years, even the bookstores as well, going the same way. One time you always had history, ancient history, medieval history, etc. And you would have fiction for fiction, and fiction was always fiction. And you have non-fiction. You would have religious sections, and so on. And then he started to kind of meld them all together, and then you would get these weird things on ancient almost mythology, really, put in along with the history, rather being labeled under mythology. And now it's all mushed together, and this is deliberate, by the way. It doesn't happen by this. There's no trend through any profession, including librarians, that starts off by itself, like one brand saying, I think we'll do it this way. And then they all follow suit. It doesn't happen like that. Everything in culture comes from the top down. You understand? And that was in preparation for all the stuff that's getting churned out by the ton now and dumped on the public, who are so mind-bombed already by flattened ladies, by steamroller and stuff like this, that it's quite easy to get them into a state where they don't know what fact and fiction is. And then there's even entertainment programs out there, television, radio, that really suck them in, and that's fine when it's classed as entertainment. And it's fine too if the listeners could remember it's entertainment. But it's often presented in different fashion. And they will often bring on real stuff and bring on entertainment until literally the whole stuff is just a mush. That's a form of psychological warfare, you see. Right up there with the best of propaganda or intelligence, counterintelligence. Back with more after this break. Hi folks, I am back, cutting through the matrix. And just talking about how our minds are molded, always in advance of big changes, in preparation for the changes.